How big of an impact can Jordyn Tyson make in his first year with the Sun Devils? Let's talk about it and predict his stats on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. And of course, stay in touch with our content by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today is a player that I am very excited for, and contrary to belief, because I have been confusing him with another receiver that was linked to the Sun Devils. I am here to tell you I am a Jordyn Tyson fan. I do not plan to confuse the two moving forward. My deepest apologies to Tyson if for some reason you're watching this episode. I promise that moving forward, I will not confuse you with Jordan Hudson anymore. Jordyn Tyson is the transfer wide receiver for the Sun Devils coming from Colorado and really was one of their lone bright spots last year on a team that otherwise was very, very bad. Like, we can call a spade a spade. The Buffaloes won a single game last year against Cal to keep themselves out of last place in the conference. They finished 11th place. So a win's a win at the end of the day. That's what my dad has always said. That's how I have picked it up as well. But back to Tyson. Tyson was a very, very explosive receiver for the team before he had a season-ending injury that required him to have surgery. In the 9 games he appeared in, he led the team in receiving yards. Didn't even play the full year. Led the team in receiving yards with 470 on 22 catches. So a whopping 21.4 yards per reception for him. He also scored 4 touchdowns. And then later on, I do want to talk about the return man prowess that he has as well, but we will get to that later on in the show. In the meantime, looking at what he does, he is a massive deep threat for the team and somebody who can take the top off the defense. Arizona State should know best what Tyson's ability is because last year against the Sun Devils, he recorded 5 catches for 115 yards and a touchdown, including a 58-yard touchdown. He also had a massive punt return touchdown. I don't have the yardage in front of me. It was majority of the field there. I feel like it was 80 yards, but I don't have that in front of me at the moment. But he was absolutely a big play threat for the team. And it'll be really interesting to see how the Sun Devils get him involved in his first year. Again, he is coming off a surgery, a season-ending surgery. So I feel like the expectations should be tempered for him a little bit. At the same time, he could be one of the top options on this offense. At a minimum, I feel like beyond 2023, Jordyn Tyson could be a very massive part of the Sun Devils offense. But looking at him for 2023, we're going to start with the receptions. We'll get to the yards and the touchdowns, and then we'll talk about the receiving return man prowess as well. Looking at receptions first, again, this kind of plays into how big of a role is he going to play in his first year with the Sun Devils. Last year, with the Buffaloes, again, he only had 22 catches, but you also need to take into account just how bad his quarterback play was, and they were unable to get him consistently involved. The starter for the majority of the year was JT Shrout, who completed 44.3% of his passes. I mean, that's about as abysmal as it's going to be. And then Owen McCown was their other quarterback, and he completed 57%. They had 2 other quarterbacks as well that played important time for them. The bottom line here is Jordyn Tyson was making the most of a bad situation with those 22 catches and doing a lot with them. For me, I look at Jordyn Tyson. If he is able to seize a starting role, potentially as the team's 3rd receiver, maybe even the second receiver. I do think that the potential and the talent is there for him to be a heavily involved player in the offense. I'm going with an absolute high, and this is stars aligning here, of 50 catches. To me, this would be him seizing that role as a full-time starter for the team. I think that 50 catches would be an absolutely astronomically great year for him. But the potential is there. And that is what I'm basing it off of, is the potential. It's not necessarily based off of like, oh, well, if he's a number two receiver, he should be a 50 catch guy. I don't think that he should be anything. I think that he can be a lot of things. 50 catches, the high for me. At a low, I'll go with 15 catches. I initially had 20, but I'll go just a little bit lower and go 15 because I can see him in a very similar role to what Brian Thompson was in during his time with Arizona State. So Brian Thompson had taken a little bit to get adjusted to the team after being a transfer from Utah. In his first year with the Sun Devils, he only caught 13 passes, and this could be a very similar situation to what Jordyn Tyson is going to be looking at because there is an abundance of talent at the receiver spot. The team could take an option to slowly bring him along. And because of that, he could take a little bit of time to actually get acquainted to the game and have a significant role with the team. 15 is my low. My final prediction is 25. I'm still going a little bit on the lower side here just because there is so many talented players for the Sun Devils to try and get involved in the offense. But I do think that he is somebody that will still find a way to get onto the field as long as he is healthy and as long as he is 100% for the start of the year. I think it would be difficult to not incorporate him on this offense because he does have such big playability for the team. He is able to take the top off of defenses. I think it would be a very, very smart decision for the Sun Devils to get him onto the field, even if it's not consistently, just for those deep shots. You try and think about some of the best Sun Devil teams or not even the best Sun Devil teams, but like some of the better offenses that they had. They always had a deep threat that they were able to rely on for those deep shots. In recent years, it was Brandon Ayuk. His first year with the Sun Devils, he wasn't a featured part of the offense, but he was a guy that was taking the top off of defenses. Then he had Frank Darby that was doing that. Then Ricky Pearsall was doing that. They tried to do it with Johnny Wilson. They've tried to do it with Andre Johnson. The Sun Devils value a guy who can embrace a role as a deep threat for the team. Jordyn Tyson feels like he can be that kind of player. So I don't know if he's going to have a major role in year one as a consistent player on the offense, but I can see him having a role as the team's very valuable deep threat that they try to get incorporated as often as possible. That is my prediction for the receptions for Jordyn Tyson. We'll go ahead and get into the receiving yards in just one moment. Before we get that far, though, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you guys for tuning in wherever you're getting your podcast. Hit like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. There will be another episode tomorrow. Not doing 3 this week. We'll be doing 4. I am going to take care of the wide receivers and take a look at friend of the podcast, Giovanni Sanders, tomorrow. Don't miss it. Make sure you hit like, subscribe wherever you're getting your podcast. Talking about receiving yards now for Jordyn Tyson. In a best case scenario, again, this is also predicated on having the 50 catches. 750 yards. That's a lot of yards, man. That is a lot of yards. Let me break it down for you. This is going to be a deep threat for the Sun Devils. So, with that 750 yards on 50 catches, that is 15 yards flat per reception. That is within the realm of what I expect for Jordyn Tyson, is that 15 plus yards per reception. I don't know that I see anything lower than what we'll go into with my low in just a moment, but I do think that he's going to be a lot closer to 15 or more yards per reception in 2023. Now, this could also turn into, the low, like let's say on like 5 catches. I could see him still getting close to, I don't know, 75, 80, maybe even 100 yards just because he gets that deep threat ability. This is the same thing just with higher volume. To me, this 50 catches, 750 yards is going to be based off of having essentially like a number 2 role next to Elijah Badger. He would be kind of the Brandon Ayuk to the N'Keal Harry that Elijah Badger could be for the team. This is going to be a massive best case scenario. And I'll tell you right now, I don't see this happening in year 1. In year 2, we can revisit it and we can talk about how big a role he's going to have and potentially the ability to be a number 2 or who knows, maybe even a number 1 receiver next year. We don't know what's going to happen to the team. But what we do know is Jordyn Tyson is a young guy who is a very good deep threat. He showed that at Colorado. I anticipate he's going to show it here at Arizona State. 750 yards and 15 yards per reception is my massive best case scenario. In a worst case scenario, on 15 catches, I'm going with just 200 yards. I initially only had 150 yards I still kept the 200 yards. I just initially had 20 catches, which would have given him a flat 10 yards per reception. And again, this is kind of based off of the Brian Thompson season because his first year was 13 catches for 130 yards, a flat 10 yards per catch, when he had previously been able to stretch defenses quite a bit during his time at Utah. He was a 25.6 and a 20.8 yards per reception guy on very small amounts, but coming to Arizona State, it was a very different situation for him and the way he was used and whatnot. I could see something similar to Jordyn Tyson where maybe the offense isn't able to get that deep passing game going for one reason or another, not necessarily because the play calling is bad, not necessarily because the quarterbacks are bad, maybe a culmination of all the things. Maybe Jordyn Tyson isn't 100% ready to go. Maybe he isn't ready to be a full-time deep threat for the team. Again, a lot of different factors could play into this, which is why I think that his lowest on 15 catches, probably 200 yards. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 150 yards and he was around that 10 yards per reception. It would be, I don't necessarily see it, but I can at the same time, if you kind of get what I'm saying. Not ideal is the bottom line. My final prediction here, I'm going with on 25 catches, 400 yards, a very healthy 16 yards per reception. I think that with a low volume could potentially come a high amount of opportunity for him. If he's getting that 50, maybe even 60 catch kind of range, I don't know that I see him as being 16 yards per reception. Even 15 might be pushing it because that tells me that they're getting him involved at every level of the field. The short game, the underneath game, the medium, the deep. If he's a high volume guy, there's no way that they're only using him on go routes and whatnot. But if he is a lower volume guy, I could see that kind of situation. On 25 catches, I would consider that probably on the lower end. I think that would probably be 4th, maybe even 5th on the team, depending on how much they throw the ball this year. And I do think they're going to throw the ball a lot this year. But I do think that on a lower amount of volume, you're going to see a higher amount of yards because he has that ability to be that field stretcher and be that massive difference maker for the team. So I think that Jordyn Tyson last year, I know that Jordyn Tyson last year, I should say, was a deep threat for the team. 21.4 yards per reception. You don't do that by accident. He was an absolute difference maker for the team. And with that kind of potential, you can translate it. Like 22 catches is what he did last year. I'm predicting 25. I don't think he's going to be 21.4 yards per reception. I'm predicting 5 yards less, more than 5 yards less. But I do think that he's still going to be a guy who does have those home run balls. They're going to take probably 2-3 shots down the field a game. Jordyn Tyson could be a guy who's getting 2 of the 3 or maybe 3 of the 3. Like, I feel like Tyson has to be that kind of deep threat for the team. I think that that is a reasonable-ish expectation for him if he is getting that part-time role, but he's also getting the role as a deep threat. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to tune in to tomorrow's episode as we round out the wide receivers and talk about friend of the podcast, Giovanni Sanders, his role in the slot, and why he could be in for a breakout senior year. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications wherever you're getting your podcasts. We're going to round it out talking about touchdowns. I want to talk briefly about his return prowess and then talking about his overall role for the year. High in touchdowns, I got 7. This, again, is based off of 50 catches, 750 yards. He could have some deep balls. He could be able to work everything underneath. 7 is a best-case scenario for me. A low, I got 0. I think that there is a situation where Jordyn Tyson does not score a touchdown this year. Brian Thompson, again, I'm comparing those two situations. I think that Jordyn Tyson is probably the better player, but you could see that situation unfold again. And I'm not guaranteeing he scores any touchdowns. After all, this is going to be an offense that could see multiple quarterbacks this year. I am not willing to guarantee we're going to have a quarterback start all 12, hopefully 13 games this year. But whatever happens, the passing touchdowns are going to be very iffy. I think if any quarterback got the 20, that would be awesome. But I could also see a situation where they were closer to 15 or even less than that. And because of that, Jordyn Tyson feels like the odd man out because Jalen Conyers, I believe, is going to score touchdowns no matter how much time he gets. Elijah Badger, as a number one receiver, is going to get opportunities through the air. It leaves odd guys out, and I think that Jordyn Tyson might be that guy. With that said, my final prediction is 3 touchdowns. I think they're all going to be pretty long balls. I think that with the 25 catches, you're probably going to be looking at some home run shots, and he has proven that he is more than capable of being that kind of player for the team. I've got him at 3 touchdowns for my final prediction. Let's round out with talking about the highs, the lows, and the predictions I have. In a best case scenario this year, 50 receptions, 750 yards, 7 touchdowns. That is an outstanding year. And I think that this is like such a massive season that it is borderline unobtainable unless the stars align. And more than just Jordyn Tyson being a number 2. You would need the quarterbacks to be amazing or singular quarterback to be amazing. You would need the offense to find a way to incorporate the deep ball, but also incorporate Jordyn Tyson at all levels of the field. And then you would have to have Tyson 100% healthy. If all of those align and then a little bit more, that is a best case scenario. That being said, a low is 15 catches, 200 yards, 0 touchdowns. This is a lot more likely than the best case scenario. Is you have a guy who just takes his time to get acclimated and acquainted with the system and feels like kind of an afterthought for the team. He could be the 4th receiver on this team behind Badger, Guillory, Giovanni Sanders. Who knows? Maybe Melcon Staval also gets involved. There's a lot of mouths to feed here. Troy Omer. It's going to be difficult for Jordyn Tyson to carve out a niche. But with that being said, I am predicting him with a consistent role in this offense. 25 catches, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. I just think that he's going to be the best deep threat on this team right now. So looking at my final predictions for the team or for Tyson, that is what I feel most comfortable with. Again, I think the low here is probably the most likely of all three options. It's not what I want to see, but it is what I could see because there's just an abundance of talent here and there's so many other questions throughout the offense that Tyson could be one of the guys that takes a hit because of that. One last thing I want to point out, there is some return ability here for Jordyn Tyson. So even if he's not a full-time player on the offense, he is going to get every opportunity in the return game. We were heading into spring ball with really only one option, and that was being Javen Jacobs as a return man. After that, there was next to nobody that had really any significant amount of experience in the return game. Jordyn Tyson is now entering this team with some experience, not a ton of experience, but some experience. He led the team last year with 4 punt returns. First of all, that's insane. That they had only forced 11 punts last year. That's not great if you're the Buffalo defense, but he returned 4 of them for 131 yards, a touchdown, a very long touchdown. Obviously, his average of 32.8 is very much inflated from that touchdown, but he's able to make guys miss and he's able to create in the open field, which makes me very confident that he could once again do that again. He took 2 kicks back as well for what it's worth for 47 yards, a healthy 23.5 yards per reception. It's still less than if you took a knee, but it's there. So there is potential here for him to be a return man as well. So if he's not a consistent player on the offense, perhaps he can be a consistent player on special teams. But what do you guys think of Jordyn Tyson heading into 2023? What do you think about his future? Do you think he's going to be a deep threat, or do you think he's going to take some time to develop with the team? Let me know in the comments if you're on YouTube, but wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you want to stay in touch with the content, you can follow me on Twitter and interact with me there at Richie Bradshaw36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. That's going to wrap up today's edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.